I'm sorry, Karen, but effective immediately, your role is being eliminated. That's what the HR mannequin said. No eye contact, just clicking her pen like she was checking off a grocery list, not gutting my career. Across from me sat Trevor, my boss of 7 exhausting years, looking like a man who just pulled a fast one at a family poker night and was proud of it. His tie was wrinkled, navy blue with tiny yellow ducks, a man-child accessory for someone who just torpedoed a 52-year-old woman's future a week before year-end bonuses. 1 week, 7 days shy of payout season. I had given this Denver tech firm everything. 70-hour weeks, sacrificed weekends, even missed my mother's final oncology appointment because Trevor needed last-minute Q4 forecasts. I'd already peeked at the spreadsheet. 45,000. That bonus was real. It was already mentally spent on paying down my second mortgage and finishing the roof repairs before the Colorado snow crushed it. But Trevor? He called it restructuring. And restructuring meant trimming anyone whose salary made his Botoxed intern feel underpaid. I stood up slow, clenched jaw threatening to turn my molars to chalk dust. No severance? I asked. My voice sounded too polite. It made me hate myself. Standard package, the HR drone chirped, like she was defending a bag of Doritos from seagulls. 3 weeks. A reference. Assuming I didn't cause complications? Oh, wouldn't want to upset the bonus pool, I said, grabbing my tote bag with fingers that felt like cracked porcelain. If you're sipping coffee right now and feeling a twist in your gut, hit subscribe. Don't just lurk. I'm clawing my way to 10,000 subscribers like a raccoon in a garbage disposal, and every single click helps show the algorithm that corporate karma bites. Anyway, back to the ambush. I didn't cry, not then. I walked out, shoulders square, through a sea of coworkers suddenly fascinated with floor tiles. My desk stood waiting, cold and empty, like a freshly dug grave. I scooped up my life into a cardboard box. 1 photo of Mom with her old smile, 3 mugs, 1 sarcastic, 1 chipped, 1 from the company holiday party, 12 sticky notes with dead passwords. I didn't even glance at the papers. I just swept the years into that box like I was bagging up a crime scene. I dumped years of effort into that cardboard box like I was bagging evidence at a crime scene. The elevator ride down felt less like leaving a job and more like being lowered into a tomb. It wasn't until I got home, 2 glasses of boxed wine in, face first into a soggy microwave burrito, that I remembered the bottom drawer of my desk, the one I only opened when the printer jammed or someone swiped my favorite pen. That's where it was, wedged between an ancient trackball mouse and a stress ball shaped like our company's cartoon owl mascot, now partially melted from one too many summers. My original employment contract, still sealed in the envelope, signed and dated. I opened it slowly, like it might bite me. Each line of fine print felt like a slap across the face, until I hit page 6. Section 12, B, termination conditions. If the employee is terminated without cause, she shall be entitled to 10% of the company's net quarterly profit during the quarter of termination, in lieu of bonus and severance. I blinked, read it again. 10%. Not from my team's bonus pool, the entire company's quarterly profit. I burst out laughing so hard I snorted wine up my nose and nearly choked on a half-chewed black bean. Because here's the kicker. They thought they were screwing me over, but I wrote that clause. Back in 2016, when the leadership still had heart and loyalty meant something. They let me add it after I closed the $800 million transit compliance contract. It was meant for VPS, but I negotiated it in. Trevor never read it. Of course he didn't. The man skimmed emails like they were restaurant menus and needed the salad options bolded. Now? That paper said they didn't owe me $45,000. They owed me millions. If they wanted to play games, I'd bring a flamethrower to their garden party. By Monday morning, I was sitting in a downtown Denver law office that Yelp described as the legal equivalent of a junkyard dog with bloodlust. Seemed right. The place smelled like burnt toner and stale ambition. Greg Fisk, my attorney, looked like his tie had lost a bar fight and his eyes hadn't blinked since 2004. He flipped through my contract, nodded once, and said, "So, they fired you a week before bonuses." Without cause? I cracked my knuckles. That's what they said. Corporate restructuring. I air quoted so hard my fingers popped. Greg let out a low whistle, the kind that lands somewhere between "you've got a case" and "this is going to be one hell of a show." He tapped the clause with a pen, so chewed it looked like it had been through a paper shredder. 10% of the company's net quarterly profit, if terminated without cause, he read aloud. This is ironclad, clear as glass. He chuckled. They agreed to this back when the CEO still had a moral compass and hadn't started taking leadership tips from a Bond villain. He leaned back in his chair. Then they're screwed. I exhaled for the first time in 2 days, my shoulders finally dropping an inch. But Greg wasn't done. "Cold splash coming," he said, holding up a finger. "They're never going to admit it was without cause." I already knew. They'll say I was insubordinate, that I undermined Trevor, or had performance issues. Greg nodded. Standard playbook. Expect doctored emails, fake complaints, maybe even some HR write-ups you've never seen. They'll manufacture a reason. My jaw tightened. I could already hear Trevor's oily voice spinning the narrative. Karen was disengaged, struggled with alignment, poor morale metrics. Translation? I wouldn't let him steal credit for my team's wins. "They're probably making the paper trail right now," I muttered. "Then we get ahead of it," Greg said. He leaned forward. "Start building your case. Every compliment, every thank you email, client praise, internal awards. Anything that proves you were essential." I nodded, pulse thudding in my ears. "And the motive," he added, his eyes gleaming now, "is money. Big money. You got canned so Trevor and his friends could fatten the bonus pool." "A pattern," I said slowly. "If others were fired just before payout." "That's your leverage," Greg confirmed. "If stories like this make you sit a little straighter in your chair, go ahead and tap that subscribe button, not just for the justice already served, but for the next quiet storm that's already brewing." I left that office feeling less like a wronged employee and more like a cold, focused tactician. Friday night's rage had crystallized into something sharper. If they were going to lie, I'd catch them red-handed. But I couldn't do it alone. I needed someone still on the inside. Someone loyal. Someone mad. I knew just who. Maria. She picked the same back booth at Lorenzo's. The little tie joint we always hit when deadlines felt like death and dry shampoo was our best friend. When I slid into the seat across from her, she was gripping her water glass like it held state secrets. "They said you left voluntarily," she hissed. "Like you just gave up a week before bonuses." Her eyes? Pure fire. This wasn't sadness. It was gasoline. "Not a single soul bought it," Maria said, eyes sharp. "Trevor's PR machine is still in overdrive." I slid into the booth across from her, the red vinyl creaking beneath me. "Let me guess, he's already moved into my office?" She rolled her eyes. "Moved in? Redecorated? Probably installed one of those single-serve Keurig pods shaped like his own ego." I let out a short laugh, but it didn't touch my eyes. "He thinks it's over, that I'll slink off into the LinkedIn shadows with some exploring new opportunities." Nonsense. Maria leaned in, her voice dropping. "You're not, though, right? Not even close." She let out a slow exhale, like she'd been holding it in since the day I was pushed out. "Good, because I've got something." Trevor's been strutting around like he's CEO in waiting, bragging about how lean the executive team looks now, bragging about all the fat he cut before presenting the Q3 earnings. "That fat being me," I said, eyebrow raised, "and 2 project managers, 1 HR specialist, Gerald from compliance too." My jaw dropped. "Gerald? The guy who color-coded his Post-its by urgency? That's practically a war crime. No warning, just the old, 'Thanks for your years of service. Now pack up your dignity in this envelope.'" I leaned back against the booth. So it wasn't downsizing, it was asset scrubbing. Just in time for bonuses. Maria glanced around the restaurant, then leaned closer. "You remember the Interstate 40's RFP? The one we lived on protein bars and dry shampoo for?" My stomach turned. "What about it?" "We landed it. Closed the deal the day after you were terminated. No announcement. Yet. but it's already in the Q3 profit forecast. I blinked. That deal was huge. Massive, Maria said. High margin. CFO almost passed out when the numbers came in. That contract's going to skyrocket their quarterly profit, and it's your team's win. I clenched my jaw. So they dumped me after I secured the windfall they'll use to fund their bonuses. Maria nodded. Clean books, lower expenses, higher profits, textbook corporate greed. I stared at my water glass, seeing not a drink, but a balance sheet. My name redlined. The profits black. Trevor's signature scrawled across it like graffiti. You get me proof? I asked. Emails, meeting notes, screenshots. I'll get what I can, she said, nodding solemnly. But only from my personal account. I'm careful. I smiled faintly. I don't want you getting burned. Maria smirked. Please. I've survived 3 reorgs and a ropes course with Trevor. I know how to sneak. We paid cash and left the restaurant separately. Old habit, corporate discretion. But as I walked back to my car, something stirred in me. I hadn't felt since the day I was escorted out of that glass-walled office. Purpose. My hands didn't tremble as I pulled out my phone and dialed Greg. It's go time, I said. He didn't hesitate. Within the hour, he sent the letter. Certified mail, dry legal tone, short and surgical. Per Section 12B of Ms. Bishop's employment contract, we are formally requesting the payment of 10% of your company's net quarterly profit due to her termination without cause. Just like that, we'd started the countdown. And Trevor? He had no idea I just rolled a legal grenade under his overpriced ergonomic chair. 3 days later, the response arrived. Thick envelope. Firm stock. Legal letterhead from a firm that sounded like it moonlighted as a Harvard reunion committee. Prescott, Langley, and Marsh. I could practically smell the $200 cologne wafting off the page. Greg read the letter aloud, while I paced around his cluttered office like a dog sniffing for buried truth. Ms. Bishop's employment was terminated for cause, in accordance with internal policy and supported by a documented pattern of performance issues. I stopped pacing. Keep going, I snapped. Repeated insubordination, unprofessional behavior, strategic misalignment. Greg read. Attached, 3 written warnings, 2 PIPs, and a final negative review, all signed by Trevor. I stared at him. Bull. Shit. Greg nodded slowly, unsurprised. You've never seen any of this? Not a single one, I said. If I had, I'd have turned them into a bonfire and roasted marshmallows over them. He slid the stack across the desk. I picked up the first document, dated June 14th. It claimed I'd challenged Trevor publicly, called his roadmap rudderless, and undermined his authority during a team meeting. The only thing I remembered from that day was buying donuts for the team after hitting a milestone 2 weeks early. I still had the receipt. From my work inbox, time-stamped, and I sure as hell didn't remember signing anything, because I hadn't. Not one of these documents had my signature, just Trevor's greasy scrawl, and the formatting? Sloppy, like it was thrown together by someone who'd never heard of a margin setting. Greg tapped the corner of the paper. They're staging a defense. If they prove you were fired for cause, the clause is null. You get nothing, except blacklisted and branded as a liability. He paused. That's the game now. I stared at the stack of forged documents, my fingers curling into fists. They're lying, I said, barely above a whisper. These warnings are fake. They forged them. Greg didn't flinch. He leaned back in his chair and said 2 words that landed like a cold slap. Prove it. He wasn't being cruel. He was being honest. I could scream the truth until I went hoarse, but without hard evidence, it was just another voice lost in the legal white noise. Corporate lawyers eat, he said. She said for breakfast. Then it hit me. Something small. Something stupid. Something critical. Trevor never wrote his own reviews. I said slowly, eyes narrowing. He didn't even know how. He used to forward a blank performance template to his admin and ask her to make it sound strategic. Greg raised an eyebrow. So, you think the admin wrote these? No, I said. But if Trevor typed them, he used his computer. That means metadata. Timestamps. Greg nodded, catching on. If we get the original files, not PDFs, the actual Word docs. We'll see when they were created. If those timestamps are from after the date I was fired, I added, they're screwed. He grinned. We'll have them by the throat. I pulled out my phone and fired off a message to Maria. If anyone could dig into Trevor's digital junk drawer, it was her. These weren't just fake write-ups. They were footprints. And we were about to follow them back to the hand that forged them. My blood boiled beneath my skin like a covered pot ready to blow. They thought I'd roll over. They thought they could erase my name and rewrite the story. But Trevor underestimated the one person who backed up everything. I wasn't just chasing compensation anymore. I was gunning for their legacy. And I was coming with fire. Just after midnight, Maria's text lit up my screen like a flare. Got 'em. You're gonna love this. I bolted upright, heart thudding. She'd attached 4 Word documents, not PDFs, ripped straight from Trevor's precious shared drive. Apparently, the man who couldn't mute himself on Zoom thought naming a folder exec admin private one was next-level cybersecurity. I smiled. I forwarded the files to Greg, then opened the first one on my laptop. Top of the screen, created, October 4th, 10:14 a.m. I was fired, October 3rd. They didn't just lie. They time-stamped their own guilt. Top of the screen, date created, October 4th, 10:14 a.m. I was fired on October 3rd. They forged the warnings after I was out the door. I laughed, loud, a little unhinged. The kind of laugh you let out when you find a winning lottery ticket in a jacket you almost donated, or a diamond ring in a bag of trash. Not elegant, but oh, so satisfying. My neighbors probably thought I was either drunk or hexing someone. Greg called 3 minutes later, voice breathless. Like Christmas just came early, with a flamethrower. This is it, he said. Karen, this is your smoking gun. There was no way to spin it. If we showed that metadata to a judge, or even hinted at it, we'd trigger a settlement faster than you could say, corporate fraud. Then another message from Maria pinged through. A spreadsheet titled, Internal Use Only, Preliminary Third Quarter Earnings Forecast. Every contract signed that quarter was listed, including the still unannounced Interstate 40 deal. My team's deal. Bottom line, $38.6 million in projected net profit. I stared at the number, my chest tight. Then the math clicked. 10% equals $3.86 million. That wasn't a bonus. That was financial resurrection. That was wiping out Mom's medical bills. That was replacing every hour I'd ever lost sitting through Trevor's buzzword burials while he mispronounced synergy like it was a Pokemon move. Greg kept talking in my ear, strategy, leverage, settlement probabilities, but my focus was locked on that number. They could have fired me clean, could have honored the contract and moved on. But they got greedy. They lied. And in doing so, they gave me the rope to hang them with. This wasn't about dignity anymore. I'd already reclaimed that. This was about exposure, about putting a leash on the smug, manicured chaos they called leadership, about making sure no one else got axed so some exec could upgrade his ski lodge. Hold off on sending anything else, I told Greg. He paused. What's the move? We set the table, I said. Let them think they've still got control. Let them feel safe. And then? Then we flip it. I was done playing defense. It was time to bait the trap. 2 days later, a courier showed up with an envelope that smelled like deodorized desperation. I didn't need to open it to know what it was. Inside, a 5-page settlement offer, dressed in polite legalese, offering a $150,000 payout. Their idea of mercy. My idea of confirmation. They were terrified. It was hush money, dressed up in legalese and faux generosity. A neat little $150,000 check, like they were doing me a favor. It didn't even scratch the surface of the bonus I'd earned, let alone the contractual clause guaranteeing 10% of company profit. No mention of wrongdoing, no admission of guilt, just a sentence about closure and mutual goodwill. Greg scanned it, eyes flicking across the pages, then smirked like a man watching a toddler try to bluff with Uno cards. They're scared, he said. They know you've got something. They just don't know how deep it goes. Good, I replied. Let's keep it that way. And then, like the universe decided to send backup, I got an email from Frank Eldridge. Frank wasn't a whistleblower type. He worked in finance. Quiet, meticulous, never said more than necessary. The guy who color-coded his spreadsheets and sipped from a mug that read, "I excel at numbers." The only time I saw him upset was when someone moved the shared printer. His message was clipped, direct, and furious. "Heard what happened?" I was fired too. I flagged issues with Q3 earnings. "They're hiding something. Let me know if you want to talk." We met at a roadside diner on the edge of Aurora. One of those joints with cracked vinyl booths and waitresses who call everyone Hond. Frank looked rough, sunken eyes, loose tie, hands twitching like they were still double-checking formulas in thin air. "They cut me 3 days after I questioned the accounting around the 40s deal," he said. "Revenue recognition was all wrong. Deferred income being pulled into Q3 to inflate earnings. I flagged it for review." He took a breath. 2 days later, HR hit me with restructuring. You know how that goes. I did. All too well. Then he slid a flash drive across the table. "These are the original Q3 projections, before the CFO revised them." I backed everything up before they killed my access. I took it with trembling hands. This wasn't just backup. This was corroboration. Frank could testify to the manipulation, the cover-up, the timing. His firing wasn't isolated. It was strategy. This wasn't just about me anymore. It never had been. Trevor and his buddies weren't just greedy. They were dirty. I emailed the files to Greg that night. He called me 10 minutes later. "This changes everything," he said. "This isn't a lawsuit anymore. This is a bomb. And if we drop it, we might just wake up the SEC. The CEO won't let it come to that. Not over Trevor," Greg said. "Then let's make him choose," I replied. We scrapped the slow-drip legal strategy. No more careful letters, no drawn-out court dates. We wanted impact. A sharp, surgical strike. A meeting. One room. Just Trevor, the CEO, their legal team, and us. Greg called it a negotiation. I called it the slaughterhouse. Because this wasn't about justice anymore. We were coming to collect. The conference room felt like a surgical suite. Cold, polished, stripped of anything human. A long glass table, water bottles lined up like ammo, 4 high-end leather chairs per side. Far too comfortable for the war about to unfold. I sat across from Trevor. He wouldn't look at me. Not directly. His fingers fussed with his cufflinks. Then his pen. Then his phone. Over and over like salvation might come via push notification. He wore a $900 blazer and the sweat of a man cornered by his own arrogance. Beside him sat CEO Clayton Marsh, a human iceberg in a 3-piece pinstripe. The kind of guy who doesn't yell, just writes your name on a memo and makes your department disappear. Greg was to my left, sleeves rolled up, no tie, calm as a man ordering brunch. His yellow legal pad, loaded with bullet points sharp enough to end careers. "Let's begin," Greg said, sliding a flash drive across the table. Their attorney, a woman named Janine, who radiated the quiet rage of someone who had outgrown babysitting boys in suits, plugged it into her laptop. The screen behind her blinked to life. "First item," Greg said smoothly. "Performance documentation. 3 warnings. 1 PIP. 1 final review. All dated before my termination. All submitted by Trevor's team as evidence I was fired for cause." Trevor leaned back, smug seeping in like mold. "She was insubordinate, constantly challenged my leadership. Just ask anyone." Greg held up a hand. "We don't need anyone. We have metadata." Click. The first document's properties appeared. Created October 4th, 10:14 a.m. "I believe Miss Bishop was terminated on October 3rd, Greg said. Trevor blinked. I didn't. Click. Another. Created October 4th, 10:19 a.m. Then another. Same date. All created the morning after her termination. All backdated. All submitted as justification. Janine shifted. Marsh turned slowly toward Trevor. "You told me this was handled," he said, voice ice. And just like that, Trevor started to sweat for real. Greg clicked to the next slide, voice steady. "Second item," he said. A sworn affidavit from Mr. Frank Eldridge, former senior financial analyst, terminated 3 weeks ago after flagging concerns about revenue recognition tied to the Interstate 40 deal. Clayton Marsh's jaw twitched, just slightly. This affidavit includes original Q3 projections, Greg continued, and internal emails from your CFO instructing that revenue be shifted from Q4 into Q3. An artificial spike in earnings, just in time for executive bonus calculations. He paused. Also, conveniently, right before Ms. Bishop's termination. Then he leaned back, folding his hands calmly. So, let's summarize. My client secured the largest contract of the quarter, inflating your profit margins. Then she was fired, without cause. Then documents were forged to justify that firing. Then a finance analyst was fired for uncovering the manipulation. Greg tilted his head. Shall we continue? Janine opened her mouth, then shut it. Slowly, she turned to Marsh. Trevor looked like he wanted to melt into his chair. Marsh stared at the screen, jaw tight. Then slowly, he turned to Trevor. You told me this was handled. Trevor's voice cracked. I thought, look, no one was supposed to. Get out of this room, Marsh said quietly, coldly. Trevor's mouth opened, then closed. He stood awkwardly, knocking over his chair with a sharp clatter. He didn't pick it up. He just bolted for the door. The silence he left behind was exquisite. Marsh turned toward me. Miss Bishop, he said slowly, may I speak with you privately? Greg looked at me, questioning. I nodded. Janine started to speak, but Marsh waved her off without even making eye contact. Just us. The room emptied like air escaping from a popped balloon. And then it was just me and the CEO. Predator and predator. The fight was over. Now came the settlement. He didn't ease into it. No forced sympathy, no spin. Just stone-faced, profit-minded clarity. You're not here to burn the building down, he said flatly. You're here to get paid. I stared at him for a long beat, then nodded once. Correct. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a folder, thinner than I expected, and slid it across the table like a menu he'd already chosen for me. Inside was the price of peace. But it was going to cost them a lot more than they planned. Full 10%, Marsh said, tapping the folder, based on preliminary quarterly profit. Final amount may adjust slightly post-audit. Funds will be wired within 3 business days of your signature. Greg flipped the folder open and scanned it like a machine. No raised eyebrows, no squint, which meant it was legit. NDA? I asked, even though I could already see the confidentiality clause bulging from the last few pages like a tumor dressed in legalese. He nodded. Ironclad. You don't talk to the press. You don't talk to future employers. You don't talk at all, Marsh said without looking up. And Trevor? I asked, drumming one finger on the glass table. Gone. Effective immediately, he replied. The official reason will be breach of internal conduct policy. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. Satisfaction curled in my stomach. Cold, focused, earned, not joy, not relief. This was vindication, distilled to its purest form. The look in Marsh's eyes wasn't regret. It was damage control, corporate liability management in human form. I tapped the folder again. 2 conditions. Marsh didn't flinch. Go on? 1, I said. Frank Eldridge. You're going to cut him a check. Call it a consulting fee. He opened his mouth. I didn't let him interrupt. He deserves 10 times what I'm asking, but you're going to give him $250,000, and you're going to make it look like goodwill, not guilt. Marsh hesitated for a half second. Then, done. 2, Maria, I said. She gets a letter of recommendation. No fluff, no HR filler. Glowing. From an anonymous source. Guaranteed. By you. Marsh exhaled through his nose. Protecting your people? No, I said evenly. Punishing yours. Greg coughed softly into his sleeve. Either from amusement or pride, I couldn't tell. Marsh stood, adjusting his jacket like the deal itself had wrinkled him. My legal team will have final documents by morning. You'll receive signed copies by noon. I stood too. 3 days, I said. 3 days, he confirmed. We shook hands. His grip was dry and calculated. No warmth, just transaction. Greg and I walked out like we'd just left a wake. And maybe, in a way, we had. Trevor's career had just been sealed in a manila envelope. His reputation, built on theft and ego, reduced to a legally bound footnote. The wind cut through my blazer as we stepped onto the Denver sidewalk, but I didn't feel it. I hadn't just survived, I'd rewritten the ending. And they paid me, well, to do it. The wire hit at 9:07 a.m. on a Tuesday. I stared at the number so long I forgot how to blink, let alone breathe. 7 figures, clean, legal, untouchable. It was the kind of deposit that made my banking app freeze for a moment, like even it needed time to emotionally process what just happened. I didn't cry. I logged into the hospital billing portal first. Mom's account? Cleared. Then the mortgage? Gone. Credit cards, medical debt, short-term loans I took out during those desperate months when prescriptions came before groceries, all zeroed out, like scrubbing a chalkboard before confession. It didn't feel real until I called her. She picked up on the second ring, already suspicious. "Did you do something illegal?" she asked. "Nope," I said. "I just made a corporation cough up its soul," she laughed. "Well, it's about damn time." We chatted while I wired Frank his consulting fee. He cried when I told him, really cried. Said no one had ever stood up for him before. I told him to buy himself a real mattress, a decent laptop, and a bottle of something unnecessarily expensive. Maria got her letter. Marsh didn't argue. He knew when the bleeding couldn't be stopped. She called me 2 days later, sitting in our usual booth at that tiny Thai place, tears in her eyes and a job offer in hand. They said I was a strategic hire they couldn't afford to pass up. "You are," I said. "Now go pretend you're not smarter than all of them. That's how you get promoted." I should have stopped there. But some ghosts deserve public burials. So on a quiet Thursday night, I popped open a bottle of champagne that cost more than my first car and left a review on a certain job site. Not angry, not petty, just precise. Caution. Last-minute restructurings always occur before bonus season. This company rewards silence, punishes loyalty, and promotes those who weaponize spreadsheets over ethics. No names, no legal landmines, but anyone with a keyboard and common sense would know. It went viral in a week. Messages flooded in, strangers saying thanks, recruiters asking if I consulted on toxic culture remediation. I told them I was busy, because I was, on the deck of my beach house in San Diego, paid in full. Ocean view, no neighbors, just mom on speakerphone and seagulls fighting over a French fry. "What are you drinking?" she asked. "Champagne," I said, "the kind you don't chase with Tums." "What's the occasion?" I smiled. "I read the fine print. Then I used it to take down a giant." If you've ever been pushed out, talked down to, or watched someone else take credit for what you built, I see you. Leave me a comment below. Tell me what you would have done, or what you did when the system turned against you. I want to hear your stories, because every time someone speaks up, it chips away at the silence these places thrive on. And if you're still stuck in it, remember, you're not powerless. Keep your receipts, know your value, and don't be afraid to walk away with your head high and your truth in your hands. You deserve better.